Okay, everybody, thank you for coming back to the Xanadu Review. My name is Prester John Andrews. I'm your host. And today with me, I have, I would say, if not even, maybe the top five, for sure, top five of the vegetable themed writers on Substack here, if not the best, my personal favorite. We have Russell Sprout. So, Russell, do you want to tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your writing?
Yeah, sure. A very kind introduction, PJ. I am Russell Sprout. I write the newsletter Sprout Stack, which I began writing sort of by accident. I threw a shit post into the wind, and it took off like wildfire. And I have
like nothing I've ever seen for a debut post.
Nothing. I had not ever written anything really, and it is still doing the rounds. And because I garnered an audience from that, I was like, I'm going to continue doing this. And I have ever since. I write about mostly, I guess, whatever I want, usually some sort of piece of media, and I try and pick it apart in a in-depth way that hopefully nobody has done with that particular piece of media before. That, I guess, is the shtick.
Yeah, well, so far so good. And I have to say, the one you're referring to, I'm pretty sure if people are listening to us, they'll probably know your piece. But the Mike Wazowski bit, to this day, the line, is it possible? Well, the title of the article is is Mike Wazowski Polish or Jewish?
Yes.
You have the subsection is it possible that Mike Wazowski is something other than Jewish or Polish? Just no.
There's nothing else.
It was just so funny. It's very out of curiosity, I know you said you live in the Chicago area. Are you from there originally?
I have family here, but I didn't grow up here, no.
Okay. Now I was just gonna say, because I'm from Wisconsin. I'm from Milwaukee specifically. I feel like if you're not one of our native sons, I think you've imbibed and embodied that Midwestern sense of humor very well in that sense. Because I think it's like Midwestern humor. I feel it's kind of underrated. It's very dry and understated like that. So I think it was very funny. My wife, I shared it with her and she thought it was very funny too. So but yeah, I guess it's part of the reason I wanted to talk to you is because A, you're a good writer. B, we had a really interesting conversation a little while back when you were doing your little interview series so I think you were doing a class for that. And just in general, I think you're doing something interesting. But also because I feel like there's kind of a kinship, since I do kind of a similar thing where my writing style is let me take something from pop culture or history or a piece of media, kind of like you do, and I'll all right, let me set up this vignette and then I'll start writing about other things, and then by the time I loop back around, it whatever the piece of media is, whatever it is, it's been recontextualized, and that's kind of my style, for better or for worse. And I feel like you have something that's just a little bit similar, the way that you approach media and humor, and especially pieces of media that you wouldn't necessarily expect, or especially the combinations. I just, right before we did this, I read you were contrasting The Sun Also Rises with Sex in the City. So I thought it's are these things that you've just been organically interested in? Are you is this a word problem for you? How can I talk about these two things?
No, I really do come to it organically. I mean, I have strong opinions about Sex in the City, in part because I watched it with my fiance at the time when we were watching it, now wife, and there is a lot, I think, to be gained from a close reading of these sorts of pieces of media. That's why I do it. I think it's why you do it as well. It's fun to do, and it also it's a good exercise in reminding yourself of this kind of eternal context of everything, right? You look at something, you can see where it exists in time, where it exists in space, and you can really place it. I feel like when we watch TV shows or movies or read books, we kind of expect them to exist in a vacuum. And I know that, there's a whole school of scholarly thought that says you got to place it in a vacuum. Or there in an opposing school of scholarly thought that says, no, you must examine this context. And I feel like that second school of thought, it's a little limited at times to what is prim and proper, but you can you can get into the weeds with it. You can explore these things. I think it's a lot of fun to do. I think it's a lot of fun to write.
Yeah, I watched Sex in the City kind of as a young man, not mostly just because it was like, I think I was like a teenager, and it was syndicated TV and there was not a lot else on, but it was like, oh, this is my my window into the mind of women. And shout out to friend of the show, Sudana Krasnitcher, who's also a big fan of Sex in the City, and that one I've never really came back to. But the other one that I thought was really interesting is you wrote about Gilmore Girls, and Gilmore Girls is a show that I don't really like, but I have strong opinions on because I've seen like 3 times, because kind of like you, like my wife really loved Gilmore Girls, and we first started dating, she would watch that and have me watch it with her. And I guess if you want to talk about the piece or the show more broadly, because I think both like that show specifically and also the pre-streaming TV shows, I feel like there has been a lost art to telling a self-contained story and doing it really well that has kind of gone away a little bit in the streaming era. And one more thing, and I'll throw it back to you. Regarding Gilmore Girls, my take is Emily Gilmore has never done anything wrong ever and is the best character in the show. But go, what's your reaction to all that?
I feel like that's a pretty common take about Emily Gilmore. And I read a rambling article earlier today. I wish it's a guy with a bunch of Greek letters in his name. I wish I could remember what it was.
Such cases.
That I have the piece was it was interesting. I disagreed with most of it. It was kind of all over the place, but it did kind of talk about the missing role of the matriarch in our modern lives. And I feel like, Emily Gilmore is kind of the model of that missing role, right? Like an elderly woman who's had kids, she's established in her community, and she holds real power, real sway. Excellent character. I do not think she did everything right. I think she has some real problems.
Podcast over.
We're done. Goodbye.
This is an Emily Gilmore podcast. Unfortunately,
I am curious. What is your issue with the show? What don't you like about it? Not to get you in trouble here.
No. Well, here's the thing. I like the show, other than Lorelai is maybe the worst character of all time in media. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but like I find Lorelai so incredibly unlikable. Where like everything, like it's a very charming show otherwise. Like Rory is great, her family is great, but she's basically like, and I realize this is kind of the pitch of the show. She's like continuing, like perpetually like a 16-year-old girl who never grows out of that. And it's just something that I find like, in the way that I find like Emily Gilmore very endearing, or Suki very endearing, her father very endearing. It's just like grating at my personality. But honestly, I haven't watched it in a long time. Maybe I would be less hard on her. But like the Netflix revival, like made her even worse.
Yeah, it was not. That was not a good show. They need talk about a societal problem. I mean, this like we got to stop going back to old media properties like this and juicing them for every ounce that we can get. I don't know. I like Lorelai as a character. I agree her personality can be grating. But like I think her arc as a character, like that's the fuel of the show. It's a show about becoming your mother, right?
Yeah.
And she does. She becomes Emily by the end.
As we often do. No, and I do think, but to your early point about the matriarch and whatnot, I do, with things like that, I can't appreciate that there's something that they're trying to do that is a larger arc. Whereas I feel like maybe now a lot of TV is, they're trying to have it bingeable or whatnot, or just kind of like these big blocks. And I think that's something that's kind of lost. And I want, what are your thoughts on that as far as like TV, larger media? Because you're obviously somebody who's like well read outside of,
Yeah.
fun pop culture stuff. Since have you there's a piece I'm kind of playing with a little bit. I have an idea about. Have you ever read much of Harlan Ellison?
I have not. I have not read much
He's
of Elements.
Well, he's a sci-fi writer. He's probably most famous for I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream.
Oh, okay.
And he wrote the short story that Terminator was based off. He did a lot of stuff in the 60s, 70s. But point being, he was like this kind of, prototypical like baby boomer, crotchety old Jewish guy who like ranted about how much he hated TV. But I think, I understand where he's coming from with it, especially at that time. It was very vacuous. But I think ironically, because he's somebody his medium is short stories, and I think the short story is a medium that I think is kind of underrated, and I think Substack in particular is a good platform for it. But TV has that same strength that you can tell a short story, self-contained, and get it off in 22 minutes or whatever it is. And much in the same way that Ellison was famously very against TV. Like I think he the type of thing he did is best. His writing is best exemplified in TV. And you can kind of ideally have run that fine line and tell an interesting story, but also not get too off into the weeds, because I don't want to ironically get off too into the weeds, but some other Netflix revival like the what was it, Arrested Development Netflix revival was
also
not good because I don't think they had that creative constraints that they did in the TV show.
Yeah. I feel like, and I don't know if Harlan Ellison touches on this. There's a real disposability in anything digital. And I sometimes feel this with my own work. It's a newsletter. It goes out weekly. I feel the need to, well, it doesn't go out weekly. It goes out whenever I can publish it. I feel a need to continually replicate the efforts and put something new and different out into the world, even if it isn't the greatest thing. It's you constantly have to produce. You're on the treadmill. I feel like this has always been a current in media production. You can see like any sitcom before like 1990, it was produced on a shoestring budget in a very lit studio, and they were filming like 5 episodes a day. I'm exaggerating, but it was a factory model for television. Or if you look at the books that sold the most 120 years ago, they were like real pulpy like action or romance novels that really were, you read them one time and you threw them in the trash can, that sort of thing. So it's always been there. I feel like it has never been easier to consume crap than it is now. It's not that you have to consume crap. It's just, it's so convenient. It's so easy. It's
built in. Yeah.
Yeah. It's built in. It's everywhere. And you can do it mindlessly. You can do it so easily. Because of that, there's really no financial incentive to write or create something that is built to last. And I feel like that's a shame. I feel like when you had to have something physically, like if you had to buy a book, you might get one of these like pulpy books, literally pulpy, that feel terrible in your hand and like kind of fall apart and you get rid of them. Or you might want to get like a hardcover bound book, and you would expect something befitting of such an object to exist within that book. I feel like this is why we saw kind of the tail end of the prestige TV era, and when DVD box sets became irrelevant. Because you didn't have to if you wanted to rewatch something and it wasn't on the air, you had to go physically buy it and then have it in your house. And you don't have to do that. Everything exists all the time, and you can just get it on demand, which ironically means that you don't necessarily go for the highest quality stuff. You don't know how to pick it out. You don't have anything physical. You just go for whatever the algorithm tells you to go for. It's easier.
Yeah, and I think there's always like an interesting conversation if you've heard the term like the medium is the message. Like there's like for me, I'm a big music guy, and my I'll sometimes lightly poke fun at our baby boomer friends, but I'll say that because I feel like I have a very baby boomer opinion on music, where like music kind of peaked between the late 60s and mid 80s as far as popular music goes. And you know, a lot of that is like obviously personal preference, but at least to me, like the fact that like music technology and like physical music as a medium, I think that played into it a little bit where like the technology of recording music, it was to the point where like, you know, I feel like the 60s, it's probably like the most noticeable. Like if you know you listen to something recorded in 1960 versus 1969. In 1960, they're literally just you know standing in a room around a microphone.
Yep.
By 1969, you know you have like the Beatles and Led Zeppelin, and they're doing all these multi-track things. And by like I would say like you know the mid 70s, that's when I think was probably the height of technology expanding people's national creativity and talent. And you still had great musicians and songwriters, but you know, and then as time went on, there's democratization that comes with things like Pro Tools, etc. I don't want to get too into the weeds, but the point being that when there was some friction to both making and consuming music, I think there's like a kind of a sweet spot there that you got a higher level of quality. And I think we saw that with prestige TV. And we've kind of, I think we're kind of past that hump. I've heard people, you know, talk about things being bingeable or how Netflix will design TV shows to be on in the background. Like personally, I've gone back around and like, I'm just buying DVDs again because as of now, they're still dirt cheap and, you know, they last a really long time. And if you upload them to a hard disk, then they last forever. So that's kind of where I've come out with it.
I feel like that makes sense. You know, it's interesting that you mentioned the music piece of it. You know, even the transition from records, like they're really figuring out how to make records its own thing instead of like a literal record of a live performance. It changed the way music was made, and it changed the kind of music that was being made. Like I'd never saw them live. No way the Beach Boys sounded that good live, right? Like
probably not.
No, not at all. Or like, you know, the Beatles transitioning into being a studio only band because they realized you know, over all the screaming that their live performances just were not sounding good anymore. And then this technology exists where they don't have to like tune it back up. It's radical. And I feel like we're seeing a similar transition now where like we're understanding digital music as a medium, and it's a lot sloshier than the record. You can like the parts of songs matter a lot more because that is the way that people consume them, as opposed to like, you know, here's an entire, not just one song, but an entire record front to back. It has a flow. That's how you have to listen to it, unless you are a DJ or you have a DJ just somehow on tap for like a party or something. You know, it does change things, and I'm grouchy about it. I would like to say that it's been for the worse.
Are you a big audiophile then? I'm gathering.
The thing is, I'm not a big audiophile. I like an album. I like being able to listen to an
there's
album.
something to it. Are you a vinyl guy out of curiosity?
No, I'm not a vinyl guy. If I'm going for quality, I'll go for a FLAC. Like I'm big on the digital stuff. Just because that's what I grew up listening to, how I figured
Fair
out.
enough. I just ask because I kind of feel the same way. I think that's there's an art to how albums are arranged and how they were originally like intended to be listened to, that that I feel really with any media, like there's some intentionality that comes with. And
Yeah.
this is maybe a silly comparison. I'm not a huge gamer, but I've been a little stressed out lately, so I'm playing video games now because of that. I guess I'm a fake gamer girl because my favorite video game is Skyrim, and I used to play it all the time. But recently I got it on Switch, a handheld, and I just need something to unwind after work. And like the new anniversary edition or whatever, it has like a survival mode, and you have to eat and sleep, but also most importantly, you can't fast travel. So you have to like actually physically walk everywhere in Skyrim. And it's made me engage with the game in a different way and like find little quests and whatnot that I wouldn't do. And I can spend an evening, helping some farmer whose cows got taken by a vampire or whatever. And that's kind of how I feel about the album experience, that like, at least for me, when I'm at work, let me put on a playlist. Oh, I want to listen to this song. If you're actually sitting down and listening to the album, there's a different intentionality, and you'll appreciate it in a way that you wouldn't otherwise.
Yeah, you want to add friction back into the experience a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that's it's something that's becoming harder and harder to get. And to your earlier point about like the algorithmic slop, it's something that I've had to like actively purposely put friction in my life. Like, if I don't uninstall the YouTube app on my phone and or turn off recommended videos, I'll just be like, mindlessly scrolling, and that it starts out, oh, let me watch a video about a cute cat, and then an hour later I'm doom scrolling and listening to like John Mearsheimer talk about like, oh, well, we're going to see mass famine because of the Strait of Hormuz and people are going to be dying in the streets. I was like, oh man, this is fucked. I just wanted to see a little cute cat, and now I have all this existential dread. So I think putting some purposeful friction in your life is becoming more and more important.
PJ?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we're back.
Okay.
It's just weird. Sorry about that. Putting purposeful friction.
Yep, putting purposeful friction in your life is something that's becoming more and more important.
I would agree with that. There's these interviews that I did for a class, a part-time degree that I'm doing. I feel, I'm sorry, Danny Sullivan, if you were not the one who said this, but I think it was Danny Sullivan who said it. Danny Sullivan, known notes poster, you see him around, who was like, email is the most intimate way to view a newsletter, kind of tying it back to what we're doing. And I had never considered that. I think that's another way to add friction, because the things that we produce, you write newsletters, you also produce this podcast. I mostly focus on the newsletter. When I read newsletters, it's all on Substack and it's all through the app. And I have my subscription lists, but I exhaust that and then I go hunting for more articles, which are in fact algorithmically recommended to me. And he talked to me about this. I was like, why did I accept this? Why did I accept the algorithm that was given to me? It's so easy, I suppose. It's present. You can just do it.
Yeah, it's and that can be part of the problem too. And funny enough, like not blaming you, but part of the reason I ended up taking like a month-long break was because of the conversation that we had. Because when we had that conversation, it's just for your class, like, well, why are you doing this? And like, I'd never actually thought about why I started doing Substack. It's basically, I'm not to freak you out, but I'm you in 2 years if you keep doing this. Of like, don't go down the path I'm going down, Russell. But no, I just did it on a whim. I had something that took off. And then I just like, oh, well, you got to keep doing it for whatever reason. And I realized, like, I'm not really doing this very mindfully. Plus, I'm, writing about things that are bumming me out, because I had like a run where I did one about like Cthulhu and Spangler and apocalyptic end times visions, and then one about like social media and the Rwandan genocide, and then one about Jeffrey Epstein. I was like, just real light topics.
Yeah, so
that kept on
some
bumming
real
me out.
downer shit back to back to back.
But yeah, I mean, that's kind of, I think the algorithm rewards that type of thing, is the problem sometimes. And I'd rather just write about like kind of like you talk about things that just kind of come to you. Like I have, for whatever reason in my mind, like there's a connection between like the Millennial burger chain, like that meme, and the Bronze Age collapse. I know there's a connection there. I've written a lot of notes about it. I'm gonna get it out at some point, but
wait, I want to spin this out a bit. Give us a sneak peek.
So the sneak peek is, there's this famous passage that the historian Xenophon writes about, where he's in I think like Persia or Babylon. And he's walking among the ruins, and he's like, he's asking the people, they're like, well, where did this come from? Who built this? And they're like, well, it was giants. And Xenophon's a historian. He knew that there was an older historian there. And that's kind of, I saw to me, it makes sense. Like, okay, you're obsessed. They have like this idea of the aesthetics of something that's disconnected from the ability to even be able to make it anymore. And like the over the top, hyper done to the T burger of like, it's just two crazy guys in a dream with farm to table ingredients. Like this totally overwrought burger, and like totally overwrought like millennial cooking culture is also divorced from like the humble nature of the diner. And I don't know if that makes sense. I will make it make sense.
It's almost it's like the reverse of a collapse. It is destruction through elevation. It's like,
yeah,
we can't find a way to be humble.
That could, maybe I'll go that direction and pretend it was my idea. But at least to me, like they're not seeing the. I'm not going to get too hung up on it. Like I said, I instinctively feel there's a connection there, and I need to keep working on it. And maybe it'll never come out, and maybe it'll come out and it'll make no sense. But that's kind of the fun of it.
You ever feel like we've lost our ability to conceptualize positive change?
All the time, dude. Yeah.
Because I'm thinking what we've talked about in this conversation so far. Like, damn, we're like, shit is just getting worse here and there and there.
It's I think it's not without good reason and not without precedent. That having been said, I do think it's one of those things again, right? That's the meme of like what's that guy's name? Duncan Trussell had that quote of like, there's probably some poor bastard out there, sitting under a waterfall without a phone who doesn't know the world is collapsing. So like in some objective metrics, things are getting worse. By some objective metrics, things are getting better. And that's something that I've written about. And I feel like those are like the two poles of what I do writing wise, where somebody's like, man, this is the most depressing thing I've ever read in my life. It's over. I'm like, wow, this was uplifting. This made me cry. This is good. And I think it's very easy to, maybe looping back to the other part of the conversation, it's very easy to get into one, algorithmic feedback loop or another.
Yeah, it is. And fear is a powerful emotion, right? It's hard. It's easy, I think, to be afraid. Fear is it's powerful, and it's an emotion that's designed to protect us. I feel and we sit on our phones, or at least I do, and I experience digital threats constantly for fun, for enjoyment.
Yeah. Just, there's probably something, I've said this many times, and I'm, far from the first person to make the phone bad argument, but specifically, like, it occurred to me one point and this is something that helped me a lot with this,
Mhm.
is to recognize like not just mentally how it's affecting you, how is this physically affecting you? Like,
Mm.
while I'm sitting on my couch on a Tuesday night and I'm in fight or flight mode, and there's no, there's no bears around,
You're at
it's
home.
it's funny, but like it is also true that like that's what social, like, not to be too, harp on this very cliche point too much, but that's, I think, what these apps and these social media sites do to you by design. And I think it's good to be able to recognize that, because that's I really do believe that, assuming it doesn't just go all the way in the cyberpunk future, and Lord Elon doesn't put the grok chips on our brains, I think we're probably going to look back on this time in the same light that we see, like, women in the 50s smoking cigarettes while pregnant, just because, like, this is not, I feel like this has got to be fucking us in ways, heretofore unrecognized yet, that like
Can't
only,
can't
yeah,
conceptualize how this is fucking us over.
yeah, like our grandchildren will be like, oh my God, my grandpa has brain rot from like the psychic wars that he, from the 2016 meme wars, and he's just going off in the
There,
retirement home.
there goes Grandpa talking about tongue soccer.
He called the orderly a chud. We have to find him a new retirement home again. It's
Grandpa, what are you talking about? Chan culture. That doesn't make any sense.
it was my Vietnam.
If we can glean a positive from this, and I would like to,
Mhm.
first, it's recognized, we're talking about it, and I don't even think like this is a particularly radical take either of us are positioning ourselves. And second, we are talking because we met through Substack, I think the least bad option out there in terms of social media. Is it good? I'm not going to go that far. It is definitely the least bad.
We would both be better off, and I would say unequivocally, pretty much everybody who uses it, you would be better off without it. But if you're going to have a drug, like there's, you don't want to do meth, but maybe a little bit of, a little bump of something at a party, that's kind of like what Substack is.
Yeah, socially. I use social media socially.
Yeah, right.
For fun.
I can stop anytime I want.
I've talked to multiple people about this, and they have all independently compared Substack to a methadone clinic.
I could see that.
This is, you wean yourself off of it.
Because here's the thing, like, I think maybe I'm a little bit older than you. So I was like in the early 2000s, I was on like message boards and old school forums and stuff. So I got into this stuff like way too young. Should not have done that. Affected my development negatively. But then like social media, normie type social media came around, and I did that for a little while. I got off at like, I never got too into it. I've never had Twitter. I technically made one to try to promote this, but I just deleted it because I couldn't keep up with it. And it is so bad. But yeah, I got rid of Facebook in 2016. I used Reddit a little bit, but mostly just for my hobbies. And then just kind of that also became toxic. I was like, oh, I'm not a social media guy for like a decade. And then 2024 or whatever it was, my friend's like, oh, you should check out this Substack website. And I feel like for me, it's less like the methadone thing and more like the housewife who never even took like Tylenol, who got prescribed oxycodone for a surgery and then is like on heroin a year later. Because that was
you're gonna descend. You're gonna be.
I just had no defense mechanisms against modern social media.
Give it 3 years, you'll be fiending for some comments on Craigslist.
I know. It got so bad. I spun up my own server and was running an old school image board.
I think, God, how did I get on social media? I mean, I had a Facebook account for a very long time. Facebook, I mean, it was because it's people right? At least it was at the start. And it never really had that takeoff into like at least for me, like being the place that I would go to waste my time. God, I think I made a Reddit account at like 12. That was a bad idea. That was terrible.
Probably.
That was some crazy shit that my parents just let me do. And like, so like that's my exposure to what the internet was like. And like at the time, it was full of rancid nerds, as I think is still the stereotype now. But it was even more rancid and like kind of self-conscious about it.
A different flavor of rancid nerd of Reddit.
Yes, like
back in the day,
they probably had IT jobs, like
because it's like Twitter Lite now.
Yes.
From what I understand, I haven't been on Reddit in many years, but even when I was leaving,
there are a lot of. It's an easy site to make a bot for, and it always has been. And like the user base is disproportionately software engineers, so they all could.
Well, and I think that actually kind of tracks too, because I mean, I was unfortunately like from the ages of like 12 to 17, I got on 4chan, and like there was it was like pre what you know it as today.
Well, yeah, like, it was different. It was not like
more libertarian.
It all became poll. I remember going on like Moo I loved that. That's I
discovered a lot of great bands there.
I stole so much music on that website.
Well, they used to have. Do you remember they used to have these threads of like, okay, you share a single and you give a link to download the whole album. I would just like download dozens and dozens of albums. I got some great music from it, but old school 4chan was before everything became poll. It was much more like, because at least for me, like the era I was on, it was like the very beginning of it. So like Bush era, Obama era. So like the main boogeyman was people trying to ban video games, and this was pre-Gamergate, pre all that stuff. I think I got off like right as that whole debacle was kicking off, and I think Reddit used to have a similar like self-consciously neckbeardy vibe, and then has since moved on to being Twitter Lite.
Yeah, it's like a normal website for normal people. Like people talk about going to Reddit and finding solutions for things on Reddit.
And and I say this,
never tell anybody that I used it. No.
Yeah, and I say this with no shade towards my friends, my and loved ones in the trans community, but I'd say Reddit's probably about 10% trans, and it's like like 1% of the population. So I think that colors it a little bit. And I say that kind of neutrally.
It's the software engineering of it all. I do think that's, any sort of bias that Reddit specifically, and it used to be like just the internet at large. I think, you go to all of these forums, it's any bias that they have, you can track to also being the skew of people in tech. They're younger, way more male, like disproportionate. You remember there used to be like people would say the internet is where the men are men, the women are men, and the children are FBI officers. That sort of thing.
There are no girls on the internet, as we used to say.
Yeah, because it was it was for nerds. The internet was for nerds, and then it became not for nerds.
Yeah, which I'm which I not the gendered part, but more so I'm a big fan. I often say that like I'm a big fan of diversity, not so much inclusion. I'm for gatekeeping. I'm for barriers to entry. I think there's a less so now, but I think the fact that like Substack was based around written articles and not short form content, I think there is something to be said for having a little bit of gatekeeping and curating a specific audience.
And it's definitely, all credit to the Substack team. They have done a remarkable job of Notes has existed for like a year now, 2 years, something like that.
It's been there since I've been here, so it's been at least 2.
It's been at least
on Substack 2 years.
And I guess it still has like a literary vibe to it. You get the sense that the average person on Substack Notes, even if they don't post newsletters, even if they don't write newsletters,
They're
reads
here
books.
to read, yeah.
Yeah.
And other than occasionally I feel like I don't know if this says something about me, who I follow, the algorithm, whatever. Like I'll post a note that'll do like a couple hundred likes, whatever, and that's like very good for Substack. And then I'll see like something with like 10,000 likes, and it's somebody I've never heard of, and it's like, Trump is Hitler, Orange too, or it's like, oh, the woke mob. It's just the most low effort
Yep.
engagement slop. And I was like, who? It's kind of also like the tiers of like, you'll see people who have like 0 to 100, kind of in that range, the couple hundred. There's like the us range where it's a couple thousand, and then there's Matt Iglesias who has 50,000. But like a lot of these people have really bad engagement, so I don't even know how any of this works. So.
Well, it's probably a bunch of people just reading it in their inboxes. They had the newsletter, they've had a newsletter somewhere for years, and they just dumped all of their contacts, and they're not here to engage on notes or whatever, or if they are, they're like exploring it for a bit and then not really sticking with it.
Probably for the best, once again.
Yeah.
Well, normal, well-adjusted people probably have families and all that stuff. But kind of related, you can say or not say if you want. Do I recall you also work in the tech sphere?
Yeah, I do. This is why I have a lot of shit to talk.
Yeah, me too. I feel like we could go off on startup culture and whatnot. But this is a little bit more freewheeling than I normally do. Speaking of which, did you see the like the Palantir manifesto that they dropped?
It's
insane.
What the funniest part of it to me is that Alex Karp, he wrote a whole book, and then nobody really noticed or cared until he summarized it in a long tweet. What does that say? You had to restate it for us.
It's like, well, our dystopian tech overlords are unfortunately bound by the same laws that they use to constrain us. You got to use the listicles. Not unlike Sauron himself, if you want to use the Palantir metaphor. Even Sauron is
22 reasons. 22 reasons we're taking over the world. Number 10 will shock you.
The elitist woke elves are taking control.
This is Watch Mojo counting down the 20 ways we are going to rule over you. That's what they have to do.
Yeah, it's I've been and again, say as much or as little as you feel comfortable with, obviously for the purposes of anonymity.
Yes.
But I was in like the startup world for a little while. I'm like a mid-level IT guy, like system admin, network engineer, kind of like mid-level stuff. I'm not really a coder type, but I did work in some startups. And this was a couple years back. Has the culture changed in that Palantir flavor way, or is that just a
I definitely don't think that it is like trickled out into the world in quite the same way, because like the interactions I have with people who like they have their own startups, they're hiring, they work in startups, and that is kind of the world that I'm in. It's still very much like being self-consciously evil, which I would say is what Palantir is doing, what Alex Karp is doing. It's not just that they're being evil, it's that they are like they're saying, I am evil, I think of myself.
They called it Palantir.
Yeah, they did.
And they have these posters, they're like, far be it from me to do the hack thing of comparison to mid 20th century Germans, but it feels like they're purposefully like, is it AI psychosis plus autism plus them being on Ozempic and Adderall, and they just don't realize how it's coming off, or like, is this a psyop? Like what? Like, it just feels so very on the nose, you know?
I think they must know how it comes off, right? Like they've gotta
Mhm.
they've gotta realize that they're like adopting aesthetics that we understand as like they're adopting bad guy aesthetics,
Mhm.
basically.
Yeah.
They have to understand that, right?
It maybe it's just nerdy, like, yeah, I'm the bad, you know.
I think that's it.
To quote another artist, you know, from a famous song now, you know, I became the Nazi, yeah, bitch, I'm the villain, is that he's just but I don't maybe I don't want to, you know, go off into the conspiratorial weeds of like, you know, is at this point, like that's why I had to like get away from all this stuff. Like, wait, is this a psyop or just like bad social skills? Because I was working in tech
Mhm,
at the height of, you know, the quote unquote woke era, and some of that stuff was there. I
mhm,
think it was kind of overstated.
mhm.
But also there was that same thing is like, do you not realize how this comes off? Like, do you not realize that like you're going too far in a couple of directions, that like you're scaring the normies?
Yeah.
So I wonder if it's just like
Well, I
that in
think
the other direction.
that sort of thing. There were true believers, and it was
Mhm.
mostly true believers, who it saw it was a real reaction to real injustice. I don't think
Mhm.
it worked. I
Well,
don't think
clearly not.
goals not accomplished. But like you can understand, at least I can, how somebody both arrives at that and is continued to be motivated by it.
Mhm.
The Alex Karp stuff, the Palantir stuff. I understand how someone arrives at it, and I feel like the reason I haven't seen it taking off with more steam in the like startup world that I am exposed to, and like I don't live in a startup hub, um, is because like you can't, if you think of yourself as being the bad guy, it is hard to keep on going. It
Yeah.
You can't maintain that motivation, especially
The
especially
Adderall buzz only lasts so long, you
it
know. I
does.
think when you're, because at the very least, like say what you will, I don't want to detour too much into this, but you know, the hyper progressive era had its failings. I think that has been discussed ad nauseum
Yep.
by 2026. But at least ostensibly it was like, oh, we're trying to do justice. And I feel like the obvious failings where it didn't work out, like I said, I don't think there's anything left to be said on that subject.
Yep.
But if your thing is like, oh, I'm just anti woke, like that has even less gas in the tank than, you know, the Christianity without redemption that was the, you know, the hyper progressive era. So
Hmm.
I do wonder, like, this can't it, I don't know. Like I said, I'm not in that world anymore, and I felt like even during the, you know, the tail end of that era, there were some true believers, but basically everybody just wanted to do their job and go home. Like
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much always the case. But I had there's a journalist, Jacob Silverman, shout out to Jacob, who wrote a book called Gilded Rage, where he kind of explores these various rascals and their you know, their red pill moments, so to speak. And I would definitely recommend reading the book if you're interested in that kind of thing. But I always wonder again, like, is this organic or is this like a cynical, like we're pretty sure AI is going to be the next big thing, and you know, let's get an administration that is less likely to regulate or what. But I don't know. It's a weird moment to live in and to work in this industry.
Yeah, I would agree with that. People you cater to Caesar, right?
Hmm.
Somebody
Render to
holds
Caesar what Caesar's, right?
yeah, exactly. Somebody holds the scepter, there's always going to be an advantage in um sucking up to them. I do like the the material reality of people's lives. I definitely the wave of 2010s progressivism either did not impact them, even for proponents of it, or it made it worse for
Mhm.
I would say it made it worse for a minority of people. Most people were not directly impacted by this except through the phone breaking their brains.
Mhm.
But for if you were like a journalist or something like that,
Mhm.
I say as if I'm not on a site full of journalists,
Mhm.
then that would have some impact on your career. But I don't know where I was going with this. It's like most things don't actually impact people unless you are in a highly public sphere, right? Like the highly
Mhm.
public sphere mostly impacts people in highly public spheres. And for us peons who are faceless and anonymous and live our lives in the world, it mostly does not touch us.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm trying to think of what the book was called. There's a historian called Peter Turchin who writes about um his thing is cleodynamics. It's like cycles of time. But the takeaway is like, he's like, well, you should see not get caught up on the specific ideology and see it as like basically elite inter competition, and like as we have there's elite overproduction and there's more people than there are jobs essentially, so people start competing on in fields outside of the actual job itself, and that's why you see the Palantir and whatnot, because they're catering or whatever, or just like the old you know kind of weird hyper progressive stuff that is maybe a little bit disconnected from reality. And that's kind of where I come away from it, is like we're just at a kind of strange moment in culture, technology, etc. And there's a very big prize to be won, and I think people are just kind of going about it in non-traditional ways.
Well, whatever faction comes out and can like make people have better lives, I feel like a lot of factions have gone up and taken a swing at it, and mostly have failed. Um,
Yeah, I would agree. I've often said that, like, the whoever can win the normie heart owns the future. Like, the future belongs to whoever can offer a vision of normalcy. Maybe it'll be the whole what's his face, Ezra Klein, what do you call it?
the
Abundance
abundance,
thing.
Eric
Like,
Thompson.
what if we did good things platform? But at this point, between the evil orb company and what if we did good things, I mean,
What if we did bad things?
what if we were
that's
evil?
that's our pitch. What if we
Like,
were
okay.
not good?
Okay, well,
That sounds like a winning message.
yeah, you got a couple more years, see how it goes. um these things, they can surprise you, right? Sometimes God's little accidents, right?
Yeah, I do. I feel there is popular. This is like we're saying things that have been said 1,000 times before.
Mhm,
Nothing is new under the sun, but this is particularly unnew under
mhm,
many recent suns.
mhm,
And there does seem to be an ongoing, I guess, transition back into reality. I mean, like physical reality
mhm,
for a lot of these things. Yeah, even on Substack, we see like the most successful writers are also doing events. Like I'm thinking like the Emily Sunbergs of the world,
mhm,
or the Metropolitan Review. They're trying to go back into physical space. You see this happening other places where like, yeah, you want to show up somewhere, you want to make the social lives that we have in the social fabrics more in person, and literally more real. And I think something similar is already happening in like the political sphere, politics being downstream of culture, I suppose,
mhm,
where you see an increased emphasis on look around you, look at like your city, your neighborhood, your block, um, and start there and go forward, instead of like I think there's like there is a realization, like we talked about through the first half of this show, where people are realizing that their social media use is not making them happy, and it's not useful. There is also people looking at a politics of messaging, of immediacy, and realizing that it has not improved their lives in any way for the decade and a half that it has existed. And I feel like we're returning, or beginning to, like we're at the very, very start of it, beginning to return to look at where you are in the world and start from there.
Yeah, there's well, with any of these things, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We're kind of narrowing on some pretty commonly said things, and you know, I know for sure I'm guilty of this. It's and also like this podcast will probably do numbers because of it. Let's be real. Because that's what people want to hear. Like with anything, like, you know, you want to hear about how, you know, the world is terrible and or the banal ways to fix it. But did you ever see there's a show starring Jude Law called The Young Pope?
Oh, I heard of the show. I did not see it.
The point being, like, and this is, and it's not even really spoilers if ever you do want to watch it. There's a scene in it where like Jude Law has this vision of all these popes of the past, and he's like, you know, what is your wisdom? And I forget exactly what it is. Like, you know, you need to trust your instincts. And he's like, wait, that's it? That's all you have for me? And they're like, well, truth is banal. It's, you know, there these things that are cliche for a reason. And we can say these things over and over again. And I think, be it with this media that we're talking about, these perennial stories, or you and I having the, you know, the classic podcast, you know, jaded tech guy conversation about, you know, phone indeed bad. These things are true and they're banal, and we need to rediscover them for ourselves. And I think more importantly, like moving past this giga irony age of, like, you know, feeling like you have to be above it all, or like, you know, finally, oh, now we found the secret that, you know, all these other stupid generations in the past never thought. If only they had had the internet, they could have rotted their brain out and read Spengler, and, you know, also watching like TikTok compilations of fascism or communism, what have you. I think rediscovering that and taking that step past and being up, which is something I'm trying to find a way to write about. Of, you know, you see the orthodox of, well, here's the traditional wisdom, and then you have the tearing down, the deconstruction, the irony. And I think it's the hardest thing to do is to take that third step. It's like, well, why did we believe this in the first place? Why was this perennial wisdom? And I feel like that's where a lot of people are at individually, I hope. And I think hopefully we're getting there as a culture.
Yeah, I would agree. Well said all around. I do think a large part of that has to be, you know, it's as we were saying at the start, the medium's the message. The move towards, I have some real issues with the trads and the converts and the zealots of the world, but they are absolutely correct that you need people. You need to have strong ties, both in your family and your community, in order for you to be a person. That's, you know, how else do you survive, man? And as we have, I think, reached a point in terms of being torn away from reality, from like literal physical material reality, where it has made people sufficiently discontented such that there's a move to restore it. And I don't think that's going to happen overnight, but I feel I have hope. I have hope that people will make contact with the world again, and that will find a saner and more real future.
Yeah. And that's it's definitely something that I feel is moving in the right direction, since, at least for me, like, I remember, because I was very much into like the techno optimist, what's that dude's name? Transhumanist dude, Ray Kurzweil, all these like these futurists and like and that and again like was on the internet at way too young of an age and reading all this stuff. It's like we'll have because there's a small part of me that like if I'm being my most generous and my most human, like somebody like Alex Karp when he writes something like the technological society, some of these things I get where it's coming from because I was in that milieu a little bit. Again, maybe too young. Of like, all right, we don't need to have the traditional everything that bound us in the past. No, we can move past that, and we'll, purely of the mind, man, and we'll all, and I'm being, facetious and ironic with it. I'm trying to be sincere with it to engage with it sincerely. Of like, that was a genuinely like utopian vision of.
Yeah.
We'll have these networked states and you can have communities of like-minded people all over the world. And for a little while, it was kind of working. But I think, once again, there's this perennial wisdom of, I don't know how deep you get into the esoterica stuff, but, these concepts of Gnosticism and like the physical world being inherently wrong and evil. Many religions deal with this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of religions deal with the importance of embodiment. And, I'm not a religious man myself at the moment, but I do see the wisdom that comes with that of, choosing to live and embodied and, kind of take a specific place, a specific people, and just kind of plant your flag and figure it out as it comes to you.
Yeah. I mean, we're flesh and blood, right? That's the thing is that we are physical, and even the digital realm is physical in a very split up way. But you and I both know this. We're we're on a video call right now.
Series of tubes.
Yes, it's a series of tubes. We are both in a location somewhere else. There is a server, realistically a cluster of like several thousand servers.
Copper wiring, all that fun stuff.
All of it came from the ground at one point. Was mined thoroughly and shipped across an ocean about 5 or 6 times before they put it in a box and like installed it in Oregon or somewhere.
All over the place.
We can very easily succumb to the illusion that we have no connection with our physical realities. A thing that I think is genuinely new to our age, right? Like, hey, there's been no other time where you could like really fully escape from being a thing as you can now. And I don't know, man. People like being people. People like taking up space and breathing and eating and like being real things. And we somehow forgot that a little bit, and we are remembering that again. I think that's positive.
Yeah, I'd hope. It feels like it's one of those things where I think it's easy. It's like, oh wow, we're just gonna like all log off one day. I'd hope there's a way to use these technologies more mindfully and not just like go complete Luddites. And there's a lot of great things to it. Like I criticize tech, and I work in it as well. So I don't know. What do you think? Do you think there could be like a cultural shift at some point where we can move away and use it in a more healthy way, or is that going to be just a cultural shift? Will like legislation be required, or
I don't have a policy solution, man. That is way.
Come on, Mr. Sprout. I'm just spitballing.
Yeah, I've gone on about being flesh and blood, and I'm a cabbage online.
I didn't want to call you out for that. But,
I've been a real person this entire time. Don't let anybody know. Canceled. Terrible. I don't know, man. I feel like there's got to be a cultural shift. And I think that will happen first before any other changes happen. Specifically, I think like there is right now there's a real cachet to not being online, right?
Mhm.
Like it is already not
It's
cool.
seeming increasingly grubby with the younger Gen Z, it seems, in some
Yeah.
cases.
Well, yeah, because if you can log off and still be social, that's a real flex of your social ability versus like
Mhm.
building it through posting on Instagram or whatever. Um, and I feel like if that continues to be the case, and if the people who log off can find ways to if it can be better than being online actually, like that's where it has to deliver. There has to be, there has to be a better way to spend your Tuesday night than scrolling on your phone. And like that has to
Big if true.
yeah. And that has to be consistent. I feel like if you're the kind of person who wants that to be the case, then there has to be people who take the lead in organizing events, and inviting people over to their own home. Like you have to, the if you want your world not to be online, you have to very self-consciously build your world offline.
Yeah. And yeah, that's something I'm definitely working towards. I think like a lot of people, like I had a good social circle, and then COVID happened, and
Yeah.
I only see like, luckily personally I'm blessed where I have like very small but tight knit group of friends who I see. But like, and I think a lot of people's social circle just got obliterated by COVID.
Yes.
At least for me, and a lot of people I know who did, and it's unfortunate. There's a lot of people like we didn't have a falling out or anything, but it's just like you stop seeing somebody, and
Hmm. How
that
do
that
you
connection goes
keep in
away.
touch? It's harder. Yeah.
Well, in my case, it was my D&D group who just became my real life friends, and now we don't really play D&D much anymore,
Yeah.
but we do hang out. So I think there's what was that old book like Bowling Alone, but like D&D is like millennial bowling. It's just like an
Hmm.
excuse to hang out with your friends.
Oh yeah.
And I think you got to and not even specifically that, whatever it is, like have a specific activity that we are doing this on this date
Hmm.
every other week, and not blow it off. And I think that's probably what church does for a lot of people. At least I grew up in the church.
Yeah.
That it's for better for worse, you do have like old church ladies in your life, but in your business, but it's good to have people in your life who care enough to be in your business.
Well, I think what church does well that the other ways of doing things don't do nearly as well, and this is just from there among other things, there you get the entire spectrum of life at a church. You get, or I guess this really applies to any religious institution, but you get the full, they're kids, they're old people, there's everybody in between. You have parents, you have parents of young kids, you have parents of teenagers, and you can look around and you can see you can see where you would be at every stage of life as an individual, and then you feel a sense of connectedness elsewhere. I guess if anything, like this is part of what drove people to the internet as an alternative, right? Like you look around at your college friend group and everybody's the same age, or you go to a bar and everybody's the same age. And if you're not religious, the only contact you have with people kind of who aren't exactly like you is your family, and that you share a lot of similarities there. Um, I think that there's not a real substitute for that. It's good to be offline as well. I think if there is a next step in finding a way to reconnect ourselves, it is I mean, arguably we are already in a religious revival, but There is a need for people to talk to and interact and like share a bond with people who are in a different season of life than they are.
Yeah. And I think I would definitely agree with you. And I just would put like the religious revival and maybe more broad terms than some would. I don't know if you've ever, how much of a history buff you are, but we've had like these occasional, they call them like, the great revivals of
Yeah.
religion in America. I think we've been in one for a little bit. And like, I would put, the example I give is, I know a lot of people who are like in the LGBT community, and like they've even said like, I've known people who like grew up in the church and were either, some who had good experiences, some were ostracized. Like it was a conscious recreation of
Yeah.
some of those same uh, social structures, etc., like initiation rituals. Again, for better or for worse, like I would put like, quote unquote, the Great Awakening and a religious revival, because it was like, and I'm being serious and not
No, I would agree.
like it was a way to try to reassert some sort of universal morality. I think some of like the trad stuff is it's all just kind of like these various stumblings towards, some sort, again, like some kind of universal morality that everybody can agree on.
I
think
don't
that is
think
a universal human need.
I don't think like Albion Seed is 100% correct. I have a bone or two to pick with it, but like I think there's a very direct line from the 2010s progressivism and like the focus on the individual self and a pseudo original sin and Puritanism. I feel like you can draw a very in terms of operating in a similar way, in terms of emerging out of similar institutions and like a dissatisfaction with the corruption of a ruling elite seen as insufficiently moral. I think you can draw a very direct line there, and it functioned in a similar way.
For better and for worse, we can say that. But I mean, yeah, with any of this stuff, I feel like it's a renegotiation of the social contract. And again, that's where like because if you've read like Albion Seed, you're probably at least enough of a history buff to know like these things come in waves. I'm a lot less doomer than some people, especially on Substack, like race war any day now, Second American Revolution, etc. I would say, on one level, I really hate the argument of like, well, things have been worse in history before, man. So it's like, well, I'm sure World War II wasn't as bad as the Black Death, but it wasn't any solace when you're in the trenches, right? But that having been said, I do think not only have we seen worse, I think we have a lot more capacity to incorporate these disparate elements and find, if not like a universal coherent identity, like we can find ways to live together again. Since I'm very fascinated by the 19th century and America in particular. Like not that long ago, like we joke today, but like things like being Polish or German or Italian, these were not like trivial differences. Like a lot of people don't know that like the second instance of the Ku Klux Klan, their main thing was Catholics.
Yeah.
And this was not that long ago.
They were big in Indiana, and there was a conflict with them and the students at Notre Dame. That it like they ran the Klan ran the state of Indiana as like an anti-Catholic party.
So yeah, all that to say, like I think the divisions are in some ways more pronounced, but in some ways not as much. Because even like I'll listen to people who speak like especially Substack. Like shout out to what's his face, Asmi, who writes on Substack, who's a Muslim living in France, and maybe this is a byproduct of the fact that it is Substack and he's very online. But like, when I hear him or like many other cases, that they used very like Americanized framing, again, for better or for worse. But all that to say that like even like national borders are maybe not as big of a hurdle as they used to be. So there's, there are obviously bad sides to it, but I feel like at least in the American context, like we have a lot less distance to cross than we would have in like the 19th century for all the issues we have racially. It's the best it's ever been. I know some people get mad at me for saying that, but just like objectively compared to like 100 years ago, things are significantly better. We have made strides. I do think there's still a long way to go in a lot of these different fields, but I do think there's like, there is a light at the end of the tunnel for me in this case.
Yeah. And like, I hope against all hope, I choose to believe that America has incredible promise to it. I'm an American, man. I've spent some time living outside of the United States, and it's convinced me that there's nowhere else that I could ever be at home.
I grew up in Canada until I moved here, funnily enough, a couple months before 9/11. So that was quite the cultural shock.
Hell of a time. Can't believe you did
that. Like, it is, and this is maybe, I do feel myself becoming more patriotic in some ways as I age, just because like there's a lot of doomer people, and I listen to people in Europe, Asia, what have you. But I do think Americans, we have something. We're different because we think we're different. Yeah. And there is something to that. Like there's a lot of like pure historical material, like what do you call it? Historical determinism. Mm-hmm. And I think that is a big part of it. But I do think like the character of a people and the way they see themselves and the way they interact with the world does matter. And like I said, Americans, like, we're just built different. What can I say? We might not literally be built different, but we think we're built different. So we're going to act like we're built different.
Yeah, we view ourselves as a dynamic society in a way that like an old world culture does not. You can't, there are some elements in it that try to adopt the new world, and I do think it is specifically an old world, new world thing. Like you can see parallels between the way American society works and the way like Mexican or Brazilian society works in ways that you really can't to like the UK or France. And like they try to adopt our ways, but we are, we believe at our core that we are a dynamic and changing society, and that has always benefited us. I would say that like there will be challenges in the United States and we will overcome them. And that like any sort of like we absorb, we process, we integrate, and we overcome. That's the American way, baby.
Hell yeah. So I think that's actually probably a great note to end it on. Do you have any additional closing thoughts before we do the sign off?
Yeah, let's sign off.
So, the sign off. My question, the first of two questions, is what do you have as far as plugs, promotions? I just plug the blog more broadly. What do you want the audience to check out?
I'm plugging the blog broadly. Sproutstack.substack.com. Search Sproutstack. It is the only one out there. Sprout like sprout, stack like stack.
Got it. And hopefully you'll get the PJ bump, and you'll be in like, and you're in the top 5 vegetable themed podcast or vegetable themed writers right now.
If I'm not number one, please, PJ, if I am not the number 1 vegetable themed writer on Substack, I will be devastated.
I have confidence that the Xanadu heads, as I like to call them, they'll like, share, restack. You'll be the number 1. So my final sign-off question, we kind of touched on it. We went doom and gloom and then kind of pulled back a little bit. So, what's something that makes you feel, hopeful and optimistic for the future? Is my sign off question.
I mean, look, man, love, not to be totally a hippie here, but I grew up around old hippies. Love is a powerful force. It's an incredible thing. Shout out to being in love. Shout out to love existing in the world. I do believe it is the most powerful thing that exists. And it will always overcome. Shout out to love. It makes it all possible.
Well, if you're listening. Love from Russell. All right, well, Russell, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a great time.
Yeah, it's been excellent, PJ. You have a good one.